right. So, hi, y'all. Welcome back to Sacred Access, a space for the whimsically divine. This is our fourth episode. Woo, woo.
Four.
That's right. I'm Chesten.
And I'm Christina.
So it's good to have y'all back. And for today's episode, I've got it titled Intentions, Questions, and Vibrations. Sounds a little bit mysterious, right?
It is. It's a little mysterious for me.
So with this, we're going to focus on the concepts of feeling enough and with miraculous too, that we feel we are enough, that we feel we are miraculous, because we have just had episodes on both of those topics. So, it's really easy for us to be like, oh, just feel this way about yourself. But sometimes yeah, but how? What can I do? And I'm definitely one of those that I get miffed if someone just points out a problem and they don't tell me how to fix it, because I'm like, if I already knew how to fix it, it wouldn't be a problem. It wouldn't exist. So
Yeah.
what am I supposed to do? Right. So
It's kind of like that saying is come to the table if you see like there's a problem with a solution or some way to get
yes,
there.
exactly. I don't even when I was growing up, I was definitely a person that could point out problems with the best of them and be very critical and all those happy little things. But I've definitely changed my mindset to, if I don't have a solution or a better way to do it, or a better, yeah, if I don't have a solution or some alternative idea, I'm going to keep my mouth shut, because what they're doing, I mean, I don't have a better idea. So, why
Yeah.
am I going to say anything? Doesn't make sense. So I totally agree with you. Come to the table with a solution. I love that.
Yeah.
So today, we're coming to the table with a couple of different ways that a person could start working on more connecting with the phrase I am enough, and connecting with the phrase I am miraculous. First, I would like to talk a little bit about, it's a blend of science and metaphysical stuff first, kind of to explain why questions are so powerful, or why phrases can be so powerful, and then go into the exercises. We don't give enough credit to how powerful journaling is. And then I'll also do an example with pulling tarot cards, because I love pulling tarot cards or oracle cards personally if I'm feeling stumped about a topic and wanting to understand myself better or get a better idea of solutions or perceptions, new perceptions that I could have about that topic. So we'll go into that, I'll go into those parts at the end, right? Oh, right. So first, vibrations, right? So I had mentioned it a little bit in the second episode, the You Are Miraculous episode, that everything vibrates, right? Our atoms vibrate, our cells vibrate, our organs vibrate, our body vibrates, the earth vibrates, everything vibrates, right? And what's really cool is that each thing has a different vibration. So you could measure the vibration of a compound, so two atoms pairing together or multiple atoms pairing together, you can measure that vibration and determine the angles of the bonds and what components are bonded together. I mean, how freaking cool is that?
That is cool.
Right. And so those building blocks of those vibrations, again, create cells, but they also create organs. So the vibration of our liver is going to be different than the vibration of our kidney. And that's going to be different than the vibration of our blood. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you take that a step further, we know that emotions tie in with hormones, right? All that fun, happy stuff. And so anger has a vibration that is different than sadness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even if we think about it, when I feel angry, my energy feels higher. I feel warmer, and it feels more of a really big pulsing, right?
Yeah. Yep, I feel that same. Yeah,
Right? And
yeah.
then when I feel sad, for example, or grieving, it feels like it's more condensed. And for me, it feels heavier and it feels slower.
Like flowy?
Just like
Would you
slow, like everything, it's almost like depending on the level of sadness, almost kind of like moving through like molasses. Like
okay.
everything's just slowed down. So that for me, when I experience sadness, that's how the energy feels to me.
I don't know
Yeah.
how it feels to me. You know what? It almost feels like sadness almost feels like, similar to anxiety. That you
Ooh.
know what I mean? That over you know how you can have that ball? It'll be either, like, in your heart or in your solar plexus or in that
Mhm.
whole area. It just that's how it feels like
Oh.
to me.
So anxiousness to me feels very energetic. Like it feels very shaky.
Mhm.
It's like a lot of movement, but it's not going anywhere.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
but it's like for me, like the sadness feels like slower. Versus anxiousness, like, "Ah, panicked, panic chipmunk, panic hamster." So these emotions, feelings have different vibrations, right? Energetic vibrations. And also too, s our beliefs. So for me, if I sit with the phrase, I'm gonna pick a negative phrase first. So if a person doesn't want to participate, don't participate with it, right? But if think of the phrase like "I am bad," and I think about or I feel like I sit with how I feel with that phrase, I feel very like collapsed, like folding into myself and wanting to like roll forward, wanting to hunch. Like I just feel very much like trying to hide, right?
Mhm.
Versus if I feel that phrase like I feel good, like or I am good, and really sit with how I feel with I am good, I feel automatically like I want to open up more, like an expansion. Like I want to expand more and I'm more inclined to smile and I'm more inclined for that sort of stuff, right?
Mhm.
And so all of these different phrases like money is an excellent tool is going to feel different than like money is evil or that it's bad for me to want to make money. Or even, and what's interesting is that some phrases, like I have people that using the word love, it's very opening, it's very embodying, it's very wonderful. And I have people that, due to their circumstances, using the term love is a very negative connotation. And for them, they close off, they shut down, they're more inclined to move away from that, unfortunately, due to how their perception of love got skewed, and it's not their fault, just through their circumstances that they went through, right? So I bring all that stuff up to say that everything has vibrations, right? Is that fair to say, like, everything has a vibration to it?
Mhm.
And so what I don't know if any are you familiar with the term, like, with
Resonance, like, in frequencies?
yes.
Yeah. Yep.
So, one of the thoughts is that and I didn't come up with this, right? So, one of the thoughts is that if I'm walking around with my whatever emotions that I have stored in my body, whatever belief patterns, whatever thought patterns I have stored in my subconscious, whatever have you, that as I'm walking around, bebopping along, that I'm going to be more inclined to move towards people, to move down the path that resonates with me. And what that with resonate, that's that matching the frequencies that I have, matching those vibrations. And us coming together amplifies the vibrations for both sides, right?
Mm.
Does that make
So
sense so far?
yeah, like, for me, like, what I'm picturing in my head, what I feel is when I get into a space around other people
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
their vibrations, they don't align with mine, and it's almost I I can pick that up where I get myself out of that place because they clash. It doesn't clash. So it makes me not feel good. So then I
Yes.
don't want to wobble. So I just wobble away.
Yeah. Do my little shimmy away. So
Shimmy away.
right? So here's the tricky part is with that, because you're absolutely right. So keep that in mind, right? Because that will help make sense for the rest of this stuff. Like, so the complicated part is, or not complicated, but something to take into account when something feels uncomfortable or when something does not resonate with us or it feels very clashy and our first instinct is to move away from it. Sometimes that can be based on a person's trauma pattern, or sometimes that can be based on a limiting belief or a protective belief or some type of belief pattern that that person had to survive. And what I mean by that is like, so the example of not feeling enough. So if I don't feel like I'm enough, what would be the opposite phrase of that besides I am not enough? So I am lacking. Okay. So that phrase. So, right.
Mhm.
So if I grew up in a community that me being my happy little self, those qualities they did not view as favorable, then my community may pounce on me and be like, well, you're not like this, and this. You're like this, and this instead. And that's not right. Da, 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 right. And
Mhm.
so I could end up with the belief that I am lacking, that I am not enough. I am lacking because I don't have that embodiment of those other things. Right. And, we know that up until the age of 7, again, we're little sponges. We just take in our environment and we don't question it. So if all these adults are saying that I am lacking because I don't have these attributes, then it must be true, right? And then peers, like school can be rough because you've got all these different kids coming in and every single child thinks that their family is normal. So they're emulating or they're embodying their normalcy so you can have that clash too, right? So you got all that stuff going on. So if the person feels I am lacking and they go through life with that belief, then if they meet a person who believes that they are enough, what is that going to feel like?
It's gonna feel like good frequencies, good energies,
Well, so it is a
right?
good frequency and energy, but if the vibration that I am putting out there is
Mhm.
I am lacking,
Oh,
and they're
gotcha.
putting that vibration of that I am enough, like they view me as enough,
Mhm.
it's not going to feel good or it's not going to feel normal or it's not going to necessarily feel right because those frequencies don't mesh. They don't
Mhm.
blend. They're going to sound off to one another. Does that make sense?
It does, but I got this visual in my head, and I'm probably gonna be totally off, but, like, so you have this person is up here, like, you are enough. This
Uh
person
huh.
here is like, you're not enough. So,
Yeah.
but what if
Well, so imagine if,
so
because,
then it creates that would it balance out to a balanced
well, depend if
frequency?
they're open. If they're open to it.
Mhm.
So, kinda like you were talking about previously, like in the last episode, that if current you that feels that you are enough traveled back in time to past you and tried to tell you that you are enough, you had mentioned you past you wouldn't have listened to you.
Yeah, but, like, "I'm busy. I don't
Yeah.
got time to listen to you right now.
Yeah.
You work."
It's like, that's some BS. Go
Yeah.
on, right? Whatever, right? And again, you're absolutely right that being exposed to that person who views you as enough can start changing or introducing that new positive frequency, but the person has to be open to it,
Mhm.
ready for it, or it may change it, but it may be a tiny little droplet, or maybe a tiny little like, like just a tiny
A little
little little opening. And imagine, like, nothing is in a perfect vacuum. If a person feels they are lacking and they grew up in an environment with that, what other harmful phrases are going to be compounding on top of that, right? Because
Mhm.
there was this cartoon that it was this kid with his head down and he was sulking as he was walking through the hallways and he goes, these people. And someone is like, hi, it's so good to see you. And he's like still looking down, walking away from him. And he's like, they all hate me. Like,
Mhm.
you know, and that's what it kind of reminds me of is you're absolutely right that if a person is open to it, open-minded about things, then it can shift and it can shift faster. But just that how like the reason I bring that stuff up is like the you so let's go back to the you have the person who feels like I am lacking. They had the person that is like, you are enough as you are. And maybe it started a little bit of an introduction, but let's say for that person that it still was uncomfortable. And so they're kind of holding that person at arm's length because it's so different than what they're used to. That frequency, that sound, that feeling is so different than what they're used to. And then another person shows up instead, so if I have the belief I am lacking, that other person feels also that I am lacking. What's that going to feel like to that person? Maybe it'll feel a little bit normal. I'm not saying it would feel good per se, but maybe that person feels normal
'Cause
or
it's
feels,
familiar.
yes,
It's
yes.
familiarity.
Yes, it's familiar, and at this point in time, if I am embodying that belief that I am lacking, they're agreeing with me. They're agreeing with me about my life, and that's one of those you could argue, like or not argue, you could point out, like, that could be the confirmation bias of, I'm looking for things that confirm to me what is true in life. And if my truth is that I am lacking, that person who also views me as lacking is confirming my bias. They are confirming my perception of the world. Their vibration is resonating with my vibration. They are helping me feel normal because that's
Mhm.
life, right?
Yeah.
Versus with the first person who thought that I was enough, that would force me to have to relook at my perception of the world, perception of myself. And depending on what state I'm in, that may not be comfortable.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's almost like if we're at a lower vibration,
So I
we
don't
have
like
to
saying lower vibration.
well
I would say protective vibration or like an
mhm,
aberrant vibration, like in the sense of I don't like saying low vibes. In the reason I prefer like protective or something is because that little person took it on, or that when that person took on that belief, it was to protect them.
mhm,
Like, could you imagine like what the consequences would have been for that person if they tried to like fight with these big adults who were trying to, make them feel some type of way?
mhm.
Like, so that's the only reason I don't like saying low vibrations with it.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Right.
Yeah, because 'cause I'm just thinking yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Well, and I think too, the thing is like low vibes to me, because that could be a whole thing. Because I guess I view the earth as having like low vibrations too. That allows us to be on the physical plane.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I don't know. It's always bothered me like low vibes versus high vibes type of stuff. I guess I feel
'Cause
like it can,
I guess when I look at things when I say lower vibrations, what is that frequency range? You know, what is that frequency range? Where do we need to get that range? You know, if and it when I'm saying lower vibrations, it's like lowering the frequency than what we are intending to be. You know what I mean?
well, true. I guess I don't view it. I guess it's one of those I don't view low vibrations as inherently bad
Mhm.
in the sense of like I know there was
I
that
don't see it
conscious
as bad
gotcha.
either. It's just a different frequency range. When s you know, when you have s yeah, yeah, I'll just leave it.
Well, because it's really hard. Because, and I guess the reason too is like I've had people that I've known in the community who will be like, "Oh, I don't deal with anybody with low vibes, or those are low vibes. I'm gonna go over to high vibes, or I just want to deal with people with high vibrations." But the normal human experience is up and down. And
Mhm.
it's kind of like, and I guess that's the part too, is that I've seen it where a person will take that. those terminologies and use it to shame another person or put themselves in the superior position to the other person. And then
Yeah.
the other part is, I guess, too, I'm way too literal because I'm like, but, like, bass singers would be considered a lower vibration versus soprano singers, and I think they're all wonderful.
Yeah.
I think that's where I come from with it too. I'm like, I'm really literal with the translation of it, so when people are like, "Low vibes," I'm like, I mean, like, but I like those, like, lower tones.
Yeah.
I don't think
That's
the
very
high tones
true.
are I think that's where I come from with it. I'm like, "But I like those. I like them just as much as the high tones." That's my literal brain for you. But I guess in my head, that's why I put it as like an aberrant vibration, or maybe that vibration is a little bit off, like, or I'll put it as like a protective mechanism, depending on what it is, right?
Mhm.
So, like the I am lacking thing, like, yeah, at this point, like for for me now embodying that wouldn't be great because 'cause I'm a grown up now, like,
Yeah.
so that would be more I would consider it an aberrant vibration or that it's a little bit off or it's not ideal versus as a child, it may have been more of a protective feature, like, maybe would have needed it to feel part of that community at that time. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, it does.
And I know that's being picky, but like I said, it's like I've seen kind of by not being nuanced, kind of the conversations that I've heard from people when it's not like nuanced like that. I don't know. Sometimes it was kind of like, but I digress. So where were we at? But that was a good discussion too. I like the fact that you brought that up. It led to a really good discussion about it, I think.
Yeah, for sure, and it opens up that topic for people to expand on, even in their
Yeah.
own mind or, with the people that they're around.
Yeah. So what was I talking so it was so the lacking. So I think we were at the point of the feeling like if I feel like I'm lacking, then the person who also views that I am lacking, that's going to feel more comfortable versus the person who feels that I am enough while I feel like I am lacking, that may not feel quite as comfortable, right? From a
Mhm.
vibration standpoint. And then if you look at the resonance standpoint too, which I didn't even think about till this moment, is that if both of us, if me and the person who also views me as lacking are hanging around each other, we're going to amplify that resonance that I am lacking. So, more
Yeah.
things in my life, the choices that may feel instinctual to me and the path that I take in life, I may be more inclined to take the path that further proves that I am lacking. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Because it's what
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, 'cause that's what's your norm. That's normal.
Mhm.
That's my normal. That's where I'm comfortable at.
Yeah. And if any and there's no shame with any of this, by the way. Like, this is just like all of us have a lot of levels of autopilot that we don't even realize that we're in. And that's a good thing because I mean, imagine how much we use our brains already as it is, right?
Mhm.
So expanding on that if I feel like I am lacking, so that person who also views me as lacking, right? And that they agree with it, that can be a friendship, right? So what would that friendship look like? What would be the dynamics of it? And if I view myself as lacking and I always have to prove myself, how much am I going to give to that friendship? And then if they also view me as lacking, how much are they actually going to give too? Right? So you
Mhm.
have that friendship aspect. If it's also in a romantic relationship, what is that going to look like? Again, how much am I going to go above and beyond to prove that I am enough? And then if they view me as lacking, how much are they going to take and take and take and it never be enough? Because
Mhm.
they also view me as lacking.
Yeah.
And then for a job, what is that going to look like if I go for a job where the boss also views me as lacking? What are the chances of them appreciating my work? What are the chances of them actually giving me a raise that I deserve? What is that going to look like? Right?
Mhm.
If it comes to, gosh, like depending like career paths that I would take, like, am I going to go for the ones that I'm naturally gifted at, or am I going to go for the ones that I struggle with because I have to prove something? So, you know, It's that possibility of maybe making my life a little bit more difficult. And the life path, when I'm at crossroads, I may be more inclined to take that path in life again. That proves my bias true that I am lacking. And I
It's like,
totally did that.
yeah, and it's like falling into that repeated pattern
Yeah.
because that pattern is familiar.
Yes. Yep. So it's setting the stage for that of, like I said, the vibrations. And that's why I know that for me, when people would say, like growing up, I would hear, listen to your intuition. And I'm like, my intuition must be broke
Mhm.
but I didn't realize how much my intuition was geared towards these biases that involved me viewing myself negatively. And so when I reflect back on different relationships I had and different like jobs, I can see that pattern there. And even people growing up, I can look back and the people who really wanted to be my friend and looking back on it, people who were very nice, I always thought there was something wrong with them.
Mhm.
Turns out they were really great people. Like, when I look back on it, I'm like, "Oh, no, they were actually a really good person." But looking back on it, they thought I was great. Like, they were just like, "You're awesome. I wanna hang out." And I'm like, "What is wrong with you?"
So, were you coming at it from a negative? Like,
For myself. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, a
Because
negative for
yeah,
yourself, but like, "What's wrong with
yeah,
you?"
"Why do you like me? There must be something
Yeah.
wrong with you must be stupid."
Yeah, like, "Get out."
Right? It's like, "You view me as awesome? Like, what is this?" So I say this, I'm totally like, telling on myself with it, right? And I
Mhm,
did that through to like, I mean, my like late 20s, I can see those patterns of it. And even as I was like starting to work on this stuff, I really didn't notice, I was noticing shifts in the people that I was moving towards and wanting to spend time with. But the real big shift of it, so I started working on it in my like late 20s and I didn't notice like a really full shift of it, like a full change of it until probably my mid 30s. And that's not to say that it's going to take that long for anybody else. It's
mhm.
just kind of like what we've spoken about before, like in the last episode, that it didn't just shift overnight. It wasn't from like one day that to the next. It's like I went from I feel like I'm lacking to, oh, I'm enough. And now all of the relationships I pick are awesome and things
Mm.
like that.
It's like you had to build like, did you have to feel like you built up to it? Like that
Um,
repeated, just,
oh, that's a good question. I
kinda like
think
what like we were talking, like, in that last episode of the more meditations, the more connectedness. You know how, like, that just
yeah.
kinda builds it
Well,
up?
and I agree with that. Well, and I feel like for every person it's going to be different, right? Because I've definitely seen people that it, and of course this is an outside perspective, right? I'm not in their brain, but it seems like people who don't overthink things, they seem to have the shift faster. So for me, because I have that inner skeptic and that inner critiquer. And I'm not saying those are bad things. That's just how my brain works. For me, it's always looking at like evidence. And I do feel like I slowed down the shift because I kept looking for, I wanted instant results and I wanted 100% irrefutable evidence. And what I mean by that is like looking back on it. So I would start to shift to the you are enough thing, and then it's like, okay, but the next friend that I attract better agree with that 100% or whatever have you. Like, treat
Mm.
me a certain way. Otherwise, it's not true at all. And so there I was, like, putting, like, instead of me focusing on for myself, embodying that I am enough, I was so focused on that external. Okay, but is anybody else treating me different? And if they're not, then that proves that this is a bunch of crap. And so then I would like dump on myself. And so, so I slowed myself down with my progress just by focusing so much on all of, like you were talking about, the external stuff
Mm.
and not the like, yeah, focusing on the external stuff and expecting a shift immediately and expecting it quickly. And if it didn't happen, that meant that it didn't work. instead of, like you said, like, focusing on and I agree with you that it is very much more like seeds being planted and giving it time to cultivate and giving it time to flourish on its own, but it's gotta go through its cycles of being cared for. It's gotta be watered, it's gotta have the right soil, it's gotta, do its thing to get to the point where it grows, right? You can't just well, I'm sure there are plants that you could do this, but you can't put a seed on just on the countertop and be like, "Grow, why
And it's
aren't
like,
you
"Whoop."
growing?" Yeah, exactly, and then it's like overnight shoots up and there are apples everywhere, or like if it's a tree, an apple tree or something like that.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I was definitely unfair. Like looking back on it, and I can laugh about it now because I was definitely really unfair with myself about the changes that I expected to have in such a short span of time. And if you think about it again, I didn't work on it until really, I mean, I tried to, I mean, like doing Reiki and stuff like that. That was in my late teens, early 20s, but doing like, and doing a little bit here and there, but actually like getting down, working on this stuff, like really being like, I need to work on me. I
Yeah.
didn't start that, like I said, hardcore until like my late 20s. And so that was after decades worth of stuff. So
Yeah.
like
A build up.
um yes, the buildup of it. So, I give this like I wanted to really talk about this, like I said, from my personal experience, and if anybody else is going through it, that they're not alone with it, and especially if they're just like it's so for me it was very slow, and in some ways I think for me it was a good thing. It did not feel like a good thing at the time. Like, but I am grateful for the slow shift, but yeah, it was not an overnight thing. It was a very slow movement, but also too, I'm naturally in or I was very much inclined to be codependent. And so I also had to slowly heal that part and start moving away from that part in order to be able to go internal.
Is that did you have to feel like you had to work on that first?
I don't
Or
know. Like, it was just so many different things with it.
things? Yeah.
Yeah, it was so many like, really I actually did work on myself a lot in how pretty much from the get, I was also working I did both. Didn't or that's a really good question. When I look back on it, I actually was focusing on myself, like, in my late 20s. I was trying to work on myself, and I did not acknowledge the elephant in the room of how much I was allowing others' stuff to influence me or others' views to influence me. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So and I like one of the thoughts or what I've noticed in my line of work and with self work and stuff like that is it's just seeing things. It's just hearing the thing. It's seeing the thing. It's acknowledging the thing is more than enough to move the energy. And what I mean by that is didn't I didn't acknowledge how much it had influenced me that needing to be loved, needing to have attention and feel supported, did not acknowledge those parts of me at the beginning. I was just focused on, okay, me, like, what can I do? Da 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 da. But I
Mhm.
needed to shine a light on those aspects of me because they were also very wounded. And just by acknowledging that those parts existed, it was enough to start the shift of the energy, right? It was enough
Yeah.
to start that shift of, um, and I do think like it was enough to start the shift of I am enough and I want to be around people who view me as enough.
Mhm. 'Cause I was just gonna say, like, a lot of us and I think a lot of just everything is people aren't felt seen.
Yes.
I think that if man, that is hard. That's hard on the heart and on the soul and on the
Mhm.
mind if we feel not seen because the repercussions from that
Yes.
are
Well,
astronomical.
we realize how detrimental neglect is or detrimental ignoring is, how much it hurts. rejection hurts because they did that still experiment. It was with kids where the mother was interacting with the baby, all smiles and da 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 da. And of course, baby was like all happy, going through all this stuff. Yay, it's
Mhm.
mommy. And then what happened is the mother would turn their face when instructed by the researcher. And then they turned toward the child and they had a flat affect, no reaction, no response. And at first, baby was trying to engage with mom the
Mhm.
way baby normally would, and that didn't work. And then baby would start crying, and then that didn't work. And the baby, you could see baby shut down.
Yeah.
Like we are made to connect. And I think that's that. I think that's why inner work can be so like complicated, nuanced, or layered. It can be so layered because it's like we have to go to self, but then we do have to go back to the community and we go back to self and we go back to the community. Like we do have to work on both just as much as we need ourselves. We do need our community. Like we are social creatures. We are built to connect. We are built to support. We are built to be supported. And so it is very much a back and forth and everybody's balance is different between the individual and the community, but the importance of acknowledging both, right? And like you
Yeah.
said, that feeling of connection and feeling appreciated, acknowledged, it's huge. Um, right?
Yeah.
So all all the fun things. So we're back to the person feeling that they are lacking. And we can kind of see the path that a person would, again, instinctually take, or you could argue intuitively take, that it feels very intuitive for them to follow this path that would continue to prove this view of self, right? And so
Mhm.
we don't want that. So what the world do we do after this lovely story? Like, what are we going to do? And so something that a person can do first is ask themselves questions, right?
Yeah.
So I love journaling. I know that's not for everybody, but I love it. Love it, love it. Instead of journaling, a person could do like artwork, they could write a song, they could go walk in nature. But I do think asking questions, if you ask questions, you will get your answer, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
it takes time to get the answer, but you'll get an answer. And and I have people who are not in this type of stuff and we'll do it for like the body, the physical body, like, well, ask yourself what it feels like in that area. And they'll do it and they're just like, I got an answer. This is what it feels like. And they're able to describe it really well. And they're just like, how did I come up with that? I'm like, you're listening. Like, if you ask a question, you're going to get an answer, right? Sorry,
Mhm.
I digress. Anyway, so with the I am lacking statement, so say a person feels I am lacking. So questions that they could ask themselves, journaling questions can be, when did I start feeling this way? Right. I noticed
Mhm.
actually for myself too, another question that really started my shift was if I would write down like the phrase like I am lacking, and then I would say, or then I would write, do I think this is actually true? And
Yeah.
say that it was a phrase that I was like, I do think this is true. Then I would say why and what's my evidence. And I would list out what ways I thought I was lacking. And then I would be like, what if I'm wrong? So again, the opposite of lacking would be enough. So it'd be like, I would list out ways that I felt I was enough. And then I would look at those. And so for the I am lacking, whatever things I thought that I was lacking and say was money. So I would say, who told me that that's a way to define me? Or why do I feel like I should define myself or view myself as lacking because I'm not making quote unquote enough money or X amount of dollars?
Mhm. It's
And
almost
so I
putting a
would,
value on self-worth, internal
yes,
value.
yes. And I noticed by asking those questions, some of them I could answer who it was, like sometimes suddenly a memory would come up, or not even towards me, but as a child listening to the adults talk to each other. Like it was really interesting, or society, like the TV shows or whatever have you. It was really interesting how for some of the things I could really pinpoint where I started believing that or where I started viewing that as true. And so say for the not having enough money, right? So say it was from, well, so and so said you have to make X amount of dollars to make whatever. So I'd write that down and then I'd be like, yeah, but do I actually agree with them? Like, do I consciously agree with them? And that offers the opportunity to make a choice of,
Mhm.
well, actually, no, I don't agree with them. I don't agree that making this amount of dollars is what's required to feel like I am enough. And I don't think a person who makes less than that is lacking. And especially like I would even point out other people in my life. Like if it was me just journaling, I'd be like, well, I know so and so doesn't make enough, but I think they're more than enough. And I think they're a wonderful person. And I think they're this, this, and this. So
Mhm.
why aren't I viewing myself that way too when it's obvious that I think all these other people are great and they're not doing that? So like I said,
Yeah.
because for me, I guess I'm like I'm an overthinker. So for me, going through that and untwisting those things or really questioning myself on it, like really challenging, okay, I believe this, but what's the actual evidence to prove this is true? And I could start putting holes very easily that I actually don't believe it.
Mhm.
And so it was really cool because sometimes just by doing that, just doing that journaling part, I'd look at it and I'd be like, huh.
You're like, "Oh, putting it together. I see. I got it."
And sometimes just acknowledging that, I would start giggling at the absurdity of it. And it's like something just melted away or a weight would go off. Or sometimes too, I could almost feel in my body where I was still holding on to it a little bit. And I would just put my hands there and just sit with that for a moment and just be like, that's not true. Oh, okay. So I don't believe that. So that's not evidence to me being lacking. How cool is that? And I would just take them off one by one and then by doing that, I would reach the point that there was actually no evidence to prove that I was lacking. And it'd
Mhm.
be like, I guess that's not true.
Yeah. And then how does that make you feel when you come to that realization from because you started here and then you ended here?
So for me, so what I've noticed for myself, I can only speak for myself, is I totally would go through like some of the stages of grief in the sense that there would be this like anger, like I cannot believe I felt that way about myself for so freaking long. Like
Yeah.
I have spent decades viewing myself this way. And and it was really interesting because it's almost like it would open up this dam of all these memories. Like I did this because I felt that. I did this. I made this decision. I stayed with like a friend with this person. I continued dating this person because and so I would just go through the anger of it, like, grr. And then and then I would go into, like, the disbelief of it too. I'm like, "I really did that for that long?" Like, I held on to that for that long and don't get me wrong, like, that's when it was just going through that, "I can't believe I held on to that. I can't believe I believe that. I can't believe, like, other people, like, these like, especially when I was a kid, other adults would hear me talking like that, and that was perfect, but it was normal to them too, right? But I
Yeah.
was just looking at it like, "What?" And then, the disbelief of, "I can't believe that society would encourage this. I can't believe this would encourage whatever have you." And then being sad for myself, like, sad for that version of me. Actually, just the other day, I was reading old journal entries of when I first moved back in my late 20s. And now looking back on it, I could see how much I just wanted to be loved and wanted to feel loved. And I just felt so sad for that version of me and wish that I could have just hugged her.
Mhm.
Like, you feel this way about you, but that's not true. And a lot of people think you're awesome, right? And so I would feel sad for that, that version of me that felt all those different ways. And then going into that acceptance. And again, I feel like that's a big thing where grace comes in, or I guess you could call it like self forgiveness or whatever. Like I did, like, that's what is it? That was the hand that I was dealt, or that's just what I went through. That was life. That was um X, Y, and Z. And I did what I could with the tools that I had, And that I'm very grateful that even then, and even before, like even in my teens, some part of me picked up on something about this wasn't right and something about it needed to change, but I just didn't know how. And
Mm,
how cool is it that it took me a hot minute, a long hot minute, but that I was able to reach the point where I was able to make bigger shifts, right?
mm,
And so going through all those stages to end with the grace of it and the forgiveness of it, and even for the other people in my life, like I don't think a person has to do forgiveness if they're not comfortable with it, if they don't want to do it, you know, for me, I noticed that looking back on it and forgiving in the sense of, again, life is hard, life is difficult. We've got so many complexities to it. We have our beliefs, we have society beliefs, we have community beliefs. We're all trying to connect and be a part of our communities the best way we can. Sometimes we compromise ourselves and sometimes we compromise our families to fit into a community. Sometimes we don't, and hopefully, most people don't, but it can happen. And that's not to negate the experiences, that's just what it is. Like that's just what happened. And I like when forgiveness is phrased as you're accepting that the event happened. You're accepting that the circumstance happened. So I noticed that me just accepting, hey, for this amount of time, I did believe this about myself, and just accepting that that's what it was really helped with continuing to
with
move that energy.
processing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that the grief thing and going through like the stages and the anger and stuff like that, I don't think that or in my experience it wasn't mentioned a lot. So the first time it happened that I got real like my first response for one of the beliefs that let go of was to get really mad about it. I was like, "What is this?" And then it's like, "Oh, anger. I need to feel that anger. I have a reason to be angry. It makes sense." And like
Yeah. Just let it flow through. It'll be fine.
how how about you when you fully embodied you are enough? Did you go through any of like those like phrases or
You know,
phases?
so 2 things I wanna just piggyback on. The first part of, like, the "you are enough," I didn't go through a lot of, like, I accepted the journey. I'm like, "I got it. Okay. That was fine." No matter how roller coastery or flatline it was fine because here's where I'm at, and it feels marvelous. I'm not gonna complain on that journey to get here. So I just felt enlightened and uplifted and just like it's like an aha moment. Like when you get a Reiki attunement, you're like, "What was that?" You just feel different. So, like
That's awesome.
yeah, so that part you were mentioning forgiveness, and I wanted to chime in because when we go through things and forgiving others or forgiving others, through my personal experience, I'm so much easier to forgive others than myself. It takes longer for me to forgive myself. At first, I was like hard on myself, but now I'm like, I just went through those processes. It is what it is. But it was easier to forgive on the outside then yeah, it's more of a struggle to forgive yourself because we're in our being. Be like, knock, knock. What were you doing? What were you thinking? You should have known better. I told you, your intuitive self, I told you. You chose not to listen. Go. That's fine. Those are my two kind of, I just wanted to chime in on those things, what
Yeah.
I was feeling.
Well, and I think that's a really good point of that everybody's different with
Mm,
how they experience it. And then like you were talking about with forgiveness, like how that's just that about yourself and you just go with
mhm,
it. And I think that's the other thing too is that like it started like 2 or 3 it was probably about 3 years ago give or take that I started to be more of like, "Oh, okay, this is just the learning journey or whatever. Well, I learned that new thing and just kind of rolled with it." Before
mhm.
that, it was way
Way
more
more of an emotional roller
way
coaster.
way more. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still have my emotional roller coasters, right? But I think it's now kinda like it's like what you pointed out is that now because I view myself as enough and because now I view myself as miraculous, not perfect, but miraculous, just like I view everybody else as miraculous, that I'm able to just celebrate my humanness. And I've got my quirks. I have my perceptions of life. I have my imperfections. I have my whatever have you. And that's just how my brain works. That's how I work. That's how I do, that's how I engage with life. And I think that those are those personality attributes that we have that should just be celebrated. Like
Yeah.
I think that makes it easier too when we identify. And I think sometimes that's the hard part, or that was at first a struggle for me, was which parts are normal quirks or personalities and which things are like trauma responses.
Yeah.
So, like, peeling away the layers, then I was able to be like, "Oh, no, that one was definitely a quirk." Or that other one, it's like, "Oh, no, that was a pattern," and got
Yeah.
to let go of that pattern, but I'm still gonna have these quirks that I have because I am
Mhm.
also very human in this
Yep.
very human experience, right? And so with it, going back to the journaling stuff, right? Because we talked about the I am lacking phrase. So say, whew, we proved that I am lacking is not true. And so we are feeling a little bit like less of a weight, right? Yay. And so then it's writing the phrase, you are enough, and asking myself, do I think it's true? And
Mhm.
if I am like, that is a big fat no, why?
Yeah.
And sitting with that, like, why do I feel like I'm not enough? Did anybody tell me that I wasn't enough? Did something in life convince me that I was not enough? And going through that same process, and then again, writing out the evidence. What evidence do I have that proves I am enough? Because how would I define enough, right? And do I have loved ones in my life or friends that I view as enough? And writing out what things I view them as having enough. And oh, look, I have those things in common with those people. So I view them as enough. And, they don't have all these attributes that I think a person should have to be quote unquote enough, but I still think that they're enough. So obviously, this is not like a definitive way to prove it, right? Or
Mhm.
if I view all of humanity as enough and don't view myself as enough, then that sounds more like a problem. Like, again, then it's not about attributes. So again, what convinced me of that? Does that make sense?
Yep. It does.
And then you can always ask yourself too, what can I do to help prove that I'm enough? And again, at first that sounds weird to ask yourself that question, to write it down, but you'd be surprised about the answer. And sometimes it's as simple as, like, if I take a moment to wrap myself in a warm, fuzzy blanket and have my cup of tea, and like, I drink coffee honestly more than tea, but if it's fun to say tea, but
Mhm.
if I wrap myself in a fuzzy blanket and, have my warm beverage, I feel like I'm enough. Or if I give myself a hug, a really tight hug, and tell myself enough, that helps me feel like I'm enough. If I like, and I guess it's one of those, whatever, for that person, everybody's going to have a different answer. But asking that question, what can I do today that would that would help me feel like I'm enough? Try writing that out. I think people would be really surprised by the responses that they could put in it.
Mhm.
And then say, for
Yeah.
example, that someone writes, if I make $1 million, it's like, am I being fair to myself right now? And why am I giving myself such an unfair expectation?
Mhm.
Because would I expect someone else to just come up and give me $1 million to prove that I'm enough?
And why is that? Why does that amount validate that you are enough? Like, what is that reasoning behind
Yep.
that? And is that necessary?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And I like that. Is this necessary? Like,
Like, is
you
that
can have that,
necessary?
you can
Yeah,
have
true.
that for the question, right?
Mhm.
To show myself love, I have to take myself on a 3-week trip to, like, all across the globe. Is that necessary? Is that the only way that I can prove to myself I'm enough? Like,
Mhm.
so I feel like it gives us an opportunity to kind of lovingly call ourselves out or hold
Yeah.
ourselves accountable for how realistic are my expectations are, how unfair or fair are my expectations, that sort of thing.
Yep. It's going back to that weight that we put on ourselves.
Mhm.
Like $1,000,000, that's a heavy bag to lift up,
Yeah.
you know? And what if you make half that? You still
Right?
not gonna feel enough? Where's the
Yep.
limitation? Where's that limit? Yeah, and I think that'll help reel it in and bring in perspective of like, "Oh, yeah, you're right. I didn't I don't need that to feel enough."
And I think another good question to ask ourselves too is, if I feel enough, what would I have to change in my life? Because I will say I've had people come in or I have friends. I have friends who will make comments like, "Well, so and so isn't, they're not changing, they're not doing anything different." And I'm like, "Well, if so and so started viewing themselves as enough, how many of their relationships do they have right now that they'd have to let go of?" Because they're being mistreated in all these different relationships. And not like at the point of like safety concerns or anything like
Mhm.
that, but like family being hypercritical, or that they're having to do all of the emotional labor and the other people aren't. I'm like, so how many people would they have to let go of? How many relationships, friends, family, romantic, would they have to walk away from if they actually believed in a body that they are enough?
And then if they did leave those people
Mhm.
to raise up, now they feel alone.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then, well, we don't want that. So then that's that repeated cycle. We're just
And
gonna keep staying and doing this whole thing over again.
And that's a really good point too, is that I don't think it gets I mean, we'll talk like there are people who will talk about like dark nights of the soul and things like that. Like we'll talk about some of the heaviness of healing and some people will mention it, but I think to reaffirm that it is true that with changing our perception and having a more positive viewpoint of ourselves, it can change our relationships, and there may be a point where we are more alone. And so we may feel isolated. And then if the person, so say a person has embodied that they are enough and now they feel very alone. I mean, it's
Yeah.
okay to be upset about that. It's okay to mourn what used to be normal. And so with that, then they could, use that opportunity to what really helped me with it is that I focused on, again, okay, focusing on myself and like, well, what does a healthy community look like to me? So then I would journal about that stuff. Like, how would I define a healthy community? What does a healthy friendship look like to me? And I would write all those things and I would put, like, if I had that friend today, how would I feel about it? Would I feel comfortable or uncomfortable? Because that's the other thing is sometimes having that wonderful person or having that wonderful group, at first it can be very uncomfortable. Or that has been my experience is that when I got into good groups of people where I felt like I belonged, at first it was very uncomfortable because it felt foreign. And so I would have to like go home in the evening and journal my way through it like, why did it feel uncomfortable? And it turned out there was still little things here and there that I still needed to like identify or address for myself of like or just being comfortable with being happy. That was
Mm.
for me being comfortable with feeling joy like you were talking about before in the previous episode, like feeling joy, feeling delight, feeling ecstasy, feeling like I belong, like, and being comfortable with those things and that it's safe to feel that way. And that I do feel like I belong and I'm with a group of people that are really awesome. So it's okay to feel like I belong in that group. Like, I'm
Mhm.
not just tricking myself or gaslighting myself to stay with a group of people who I don't belong with.
Yeah.
So I think it's okay to struggle and kinda go through those processes with it. So by, like, asking those questions, by going through those thought processes through that journaling, we can start shifting our perception of our reality. We can start shifting of, oh, okay, this, like, so the lacking, that wasn't true. That was my perception at that time. And now I'm letting that go. Or the person not embodying enough. Okay, for however many decades of my life, I didn't feel that way, but now I acknowledge it is true. I am fully enough. I've always been enough. I will always be enough. So taking that by letting go of the one and embodying the other, we shift the vibrations in our body, right? We're shifting our vibration. And so that shifts the people that we resonate with.
Mhm.
So going back, right? I can't believe we actually came back to this point because I can get lost along the way. So going back to those first two people that we talked about at the beginning. So that person that views me as enough. Now, after my wonderful, beautiful journey of journaling, how much more inclined am I to be to stick with that person or be like, oh,
Mhm.
yeah, you're awesome too. Like, we're both enough. We're both awesome. Let's go hang out.
It's like that magnetic, almost like a magnetic field. It's like, just like, "Oh, we're
Yeah.
here."
Yeah. So
You're in that
finding,
same space. It feels
yeah.
comfortable, it feels safe.
And how cool is it by me believing that I'm enough and by them also believing that I'm enough, together we're resonating that belief that I'm enough.
Mhm.
And so in other areas of my life, them believing in me, and again, it goes to the self and the community, them believing in me amplifies it too. And it, I feel, attracts more wonderful opportunities to prove that that show, not to prove, that agree, that confirmation bias, that confirm that I am enough because they also believe that I am enough too. And the
Mhm.
more people who believe in me, of course, I should believe in myself. I am enough. But again, resonance, that like you have more of that frequency out there. So the more people that I have that also agree that I am enough, they are also amplifying that. And so they also too are bringing into my life more possibilities to confirm that I am enough.
So it keeps you in that positive.
I think it keeps us more in that receiving those wonderful things. And I think that's one of those, like when people believe in us, there is legitimate, I feel like, I don't know if legitimate is the right way to phrase it. When people believe in us, they are changing our lives for the better. Of
Mhm.
course, them believing in us and us feeling that too. But I think even from an energetic standpoint of them believing in us also attracts good things to us too. It's like, I feel like that stuff can explain why prayer can be so powerful. Like when people think well of you, when they want great things to happen for you, they're amplifying that with you. Just like you for them, like you
Yeah.
believing in them, you viewing them as enough and awesome and all that sort of stuff. You are amplifying those frequencies to attract more opportunities for them that confirm that they are enough.
That makes sense.
Right? And
Yeah.
then that little hoo-hoo ninny that, we talked about a moment ago, is that a okay phrase to say? But that person, the other person who thought of us as lacking, I mean, how likely are we gonna be to hang around that person, right?
Not happening.
Not. We're gonna just be like, you can go on somewhere and go deal with, go somewhere else. Like, we don't want you. And one of the ways, so this is a little bit of it's not really a tangent, but it's a little bit of a tangent. Or I guess that you can use this as a way to help figure out if you may have an unconscious thing going on that you may not realize that one of those people who isn't great can help show is I have been called a lot. Like, growing up in life, you can get called different things. But when I reflect back, the phrases that bothered me that someone would call me, besides like the really like bad things, right? But I would be more bothered if someone called me cold versus if someone called me a bitch. But I was so worried about being viewed as cold. And I did one, like, there were times that I was really concerned with, oh, I'm not giving enough. And so for me, when someone would call me cold, it was like, "Ugh," versus if
Mhm.
someone called me a bitch, I was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
So I say that to say, like, those people who show up, like, if someone says something negative about you and it really hurts, you can use that as an opportunity to kind of dive in. Well, do do I think it's true? Or do I have some type of like, is there something here that I need to release and let go of so those words wouldn't bother me? Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah, it does.
So that is the journal way that a person can address and shift the vibrations with questions, which, and also too, like, what is it? By shifting questions, we can shift our intentions, right? So that's the one way. And then do you think we ought to do the tarot card way? Do you think
Yeah.
that'd be okay? Okay.
Do you feel up to it?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So, because at the end of the day, we got to throw in a little bit of metaphysical stuff, right? Or a little bit of other stuff out there. So, I've got a happy little tarot deck, and I really like it's called Ethereal Visions Tarot, the Luna edition, and it is by Matt Hughes. I've been using that a lot. The artwork is gorgeous, and it's a bunch of like a diverse group of people in the cards. And just, I mean, the artwork is just so pretty. I think I've shown you this before,
Oh,
but
yeah.
just
Yep. That is
gorgeous.
really pretty.
But so with shuffling cards, because just in case anybody's unfamiliar with it. So for me, I use tarot cards to better get an idea of like what's going on in my subconscious mind. Cause there are times where I may get like, say, what should I work on with it? I think we did pretty good with the I am enough thing. So what I'll do is a card thing for the miraculous, right?
Okay.
So my question is how can I feel more miraculous, right? We'll just keep it simple. How can I feel miraculous or more miraculous? And so if that's my phrase, right? And so I have my happy tarot cards, and I'm again very much an overthinker, as we've already established. And so I used to try to shuffle and do it by intuition, or like intuitively know when to stop. But the problem is that my overthinking brain would be like, well, you know, subconsciously I can pick up on all the vibrations of the card so I know which each card is. So how would I know that intuitively that I'm not stopping where it's going to confirm my bias? Like I said, total overthinking, but I was always that way. And so I think it was Samantha from Psychic Teachers or the Enlightened Empath. I can't remember which episode, but that she has a routine. Like she
Mhm.
does a certain amount that she shuffles. I think it was Samantha who said that.
Yeah, yep.
Okay, good. So yeah, so Samantha mentioned that she shuffles a certain amount every time. And I'm like, that is brilliant, which they're brilliant. Both she and Deb from Psychic Teachers and she and Denise from Enlightened Empaths, they are all wonderful, brilliant people. And Samantha's Be Your Own Psychic class is awesome. That's in a roundabout way how you and I got to meet each other and got to
Yep.
connect. Woo!
Yeah. Woo, woo.
So I have to do that shout out like, woo! Um, so So what I decided to do since then is I always shuffle only 5 times. A person can pick whatever number they want, but I always go with 5. And that's helped me let go of that thing of, but what if I know, right? Because it's always going to be 5 times. And
Mm.
so that really helped me. So I like to throw that out first. And so I'm going to focus on how can I feel more miraculous? And I'm just going to do one card pull. And so I will state like ahead of time before I start shuffling how many cards I plan on pulling. So it's like, hey, I'm just going to pull one card. I don't know if you can hear the shuffle in the background, but
Yeah, I can. Are you doing the, like,
doing
blackjack
my
table?
fancy. That's right.
I
That
can
is
hear
right.
fluttering.
And then we do
Yep.
four. There are times where I get distracted and I'll lose count a little bit, but I just roll with it. Sometimes it'd be like that. All right. So I'm doing a one card pull of how can I feel miraculous, right? And so I pulled, and I do both reverse and upright readings. For the longest time, I didn't deal with reverse, because I just wasn't comfortable with it. It was way too many options. But I pulled the Justice card. And so that is number 11. And so what I'll do is, like I said, I'll write it down like I pulled the Justice card. I know that there are people who will like look at the picture too and kind of pick up on that stuff. I tend to go straight to the book or straight to the interpretations. So with that said, what I have started noticing is for me, and I think other readers have said this too, and I agree with them that if it's a major arcana and the justice card is, then I take that to mean that it's more of a big thing versus if it's a minor arcana, it's like a small blip. So what I mean that to say is that say I pull say I pulled a card for the you are enough stuff and it was like one of the minor arcanas like a sword or a wand or a cup or a pentacle, that would let me know, hey, it's just a small thing. It's not a really big thing you have to work on. And I'd be like, oh, thank goodness. Like it's, at least right now, it's a little thing, right?
Yeah.
Versus when it's a major arcana, it's like, well, there's quite a bit going on here. And it may be one of those that I want to check in with it sooner, like, work through that stuff. And then I may want to check in a little bit sooner with that concept than I would want to do for a minor arcana. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And so with the justice card, so how can I feel more miraculous? So it's a whole paragraph of stuff, right? And what I do is whatever phrase or whatever sentence stands out to me in that paragraph, that's the stuff I'll write down. Like sometimes it'll just be keywords, sometimes it'll be the whole thing. But for me, it's the end part where it says, when justice appears in the reading, you must stand firm in your decisions and be aware that you just can't please everyone. You must take a stand and do what is right for you. And so, and another key one is about like equality, fairness. And so for me, the how can I feel more miraculous is, to me, that would be being firm in my decisions, like it said, or to me, that's also like, as long as for me, my interpretation is, as long as I'm being fair, as long as I am, for example, viewing myself as equal to other people, I'm not better than them and I'm not worse than them, right?
Mhm.
So as long as I uphold those things, and to me, as long as I uphold my ethics and my morals, honestly, is what I think.
Yeah.
Also with the justice card, it's about justice. That at the end of the day, not everybody's going to be happy with me and not everybody's going to view me as miraculous and they can just go kick rocks. So
Yeah. That's on them. That's for them to carry that.
So that's my initial thing with it from what it was saying. But what's cool is I also like Biddy Tarot. So if a person wanted to look at cards or look at additional translations, it's Biddy, Biddy Tarot. It's a website and she has a book. It's Bridget Esselmont. I ended up buying her book because I've been looking online at her stuff for years, for a long while. And I was like, well, let me go ahead and buy the book so I have a physical copy. But sometimes often I'll pull out her card too, or pull out her book too. So that way I could get a bigger translation. Like she'll have a general career, work, finances, personalities, relationships and love, spirituality, well being, and health. And so with that, and she also has like journal prompts, all this sort of cool stuff. For me to feel more miraculous, just glancing at it, it's all about, or one of the things is, as long as I'm in alignment with my higher self and the greater good of others. And so for me, my interpretation, again, of all of this together, for me, the way that I can feel more miraculous in my life is if I put myself as, again, feeling equal to everybody else. I'm no better, I'm no worse, that I am fair with how I treat others and I'm fair with how I treat myself. And really being fair about, again, I am miraculous and so is everybody else. And so honoring the fact that everybody's a miracle. That doesn't mean that everybody's a good person, and that doesn't mean that everybody's actions are good. But by honoring that and truly believing that, that for me helps me feel more miraculous and viewing it as true. But to
Mhm.
me, with the way my brain works, that makes sense, because if I tried to put exceptions to the rule of that person isn't a miracle, that person isn't a miracle, again, not saying they're good. Someone can be a terrible person. Their existence is miraculous, but they're still a terrible person. That's two different things, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but again, that's how my brain works. There are other people that I'm sure could be like, I am not calling that person a miracle. And that's totally fair.
Yeah.
Totally understandable. But that would be how I would interpret it.
I love it.
Yeah. So that is all I have today for intentions, questions, and vibrations. And even with that, so that wasn't as big of an exercise. Sometimes with a card, I'll end up journaling way more about it. And probably later, honestly, after the podcast, I'll look more at it for myself and like see what other nuances I notice or what other exercises I could get from that. But just that card, just being open to it, being open to that shift. And also too, I've definitely had it where I've pulled a card and it's not until a week later that I'm like,
Got it.
right? So this is my interpretation right now on a podcast being recorded to be put out there. But it could be a week or two later. I'm like, that's a little different. But yeah. So, just pulling that again, I view that kind of like you're giving permission, yourself permission, your higher self permission, your spirit guides permission, all of it permission, whatever your belief system is, you're giving it permission to start giving you answers in that area. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's like a form of communication.
Yes.
Kind of like when you're doing it 5 times,
Mhm.
higher self, spirit guides, they all know she shuffles 5 times.
That's right. If you want to answer it, you better do it in the 5.
Yep.
I ain't playing around with that 6 or 7. That is all I have for today's episode of Intentions, Questions, and Vibrations. And again, this episode, it was looking at that stuff focused on the beliefs of you are enough and you are miraculous, or if we said it in first person, I am enough, I am miraculous. If people like this, then they want us to like give like journal ideas or examples or tarot examples for like other topics like money, love. Those are always the big ones, aren't they? I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, but any sort of like topics, then they are welcome to email us at sacredaccesspodcast@gmail.com. Or if anybody has any other comments, questions, or suggestions for other topics that they would like us to go into, they can also email us at that email address, sacredaccesspodcast@gmail.com. And so, do you have anything you'd like to add, Christina, before we wrap up?
You know, this was a good topic today. I loved examples and walking through things that how we can work on things. So, thank you for bringing that to us.
I try. I know we gotta bring solutions to the table. I really like that.
Solutions to the table.
We gotta bring solutions to the
I'm bringing
table.
solutions to the table. That's what we got to do. I don't want to hear you complaining without a solution.
I don't want to hear just how much I've messed up my life with my belief patterns or my
How are
limiting
we going to
beliefs.
Yeah,
How are we gonna fix it?
how are we going to fix it? Exactly. You know what? We can allow ourselves to wallow for like 2 seconds,
Yeah.
find a solution. No.
I am a huge fan of wallowing. Do not get me wrong. I am like, have your temper tantrum,
Yeah.
do your thing. Cause we gotta like let that stuff go. Like we've
Yeah.
gotta
We
allow
got to go
ourselves.
through
We
all the
do.
emotions.
We do. We're still human at the end of the day. Like we're still having our human experience. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of like whatever you need to express to let it out,
Yeah.
safely. Let
Safely,
me add
yes.
that caveat safely. But gotta have your temper tantrum, let it out.
Or a good
Uh-huh.
cry, whatever it needs to be.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Put on some of the, I mean, I grew up like listening to emo music. So totally put on that music, like cry as you're staring out the window. I mean, do what you need to do. Like have your thing. Let
Yeah.
it out. All right. So thank you everyone so much for tuning in to Sacred Access, a space for the whimsically divine.